Everyone loves Felix Five-Boots, and who's to blame them? This Sultai slime is the in the 99 legend of the new Outlaws of Thunder Junction Precon, Grand Larceny. Now, rather than do a traditional Precon upgrade for the Grand Larceny deck, I want to build a $45 budget brew around Felix here. What the deck wants, what we're keeping from the Precon, and what we're adding, and why. Let's start with our commander. Felix is a beefy boy. At 5 mana, this Ooze Rogue is a 5/4 with Menace and Ward that reads, if a creature you control dealing combat damage to a player causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Do you want me to say trigger again? Now this means we want to be swinging for the fences. While Felix himself might not have an on-combat damage trigger, there are plenty of ways to give him one. And we'll want to make sure that all of the creatures in our deck have on-combat damage triggers too. They're useful both before and after Felix comes to town. But on a budget, what are the best creatures to include? And what are the best effects needed to round out these strategies? There are a few cards from the base Precon we can keep when building the deck. Some of the unblockable creatures in particular are great. Slitherblade and Triton Shorestalker make the list for guaranteed combat damage triggers. We can add in Changeling Outcast for a third of these effects too. Once we give these guys combat damage triggers, we will be rolling in loot. But they're also great for enabling a few ninjutsu strategies, like with Fallen Shinobi. This guy is in the base Precon and can be getting us up to 4 free spells a turn when he connects for damage. We could also include Springleaf Avenger for more ninja tricks. This one acts like a super eternal witness every turn. Speaking of Fallen Shinobi and free spells, Dazzling Sphinx is in the base Precon and we'll want to keep it in our list. Casting multiple free spells a turn is great, and the Sphinx does it with evasion every turn too. We also want to keep the amazing Orin Frostfang. I can't believe this was included in the base Precon because it was very expensive for a long time and is now perfect for budget brews, turning all of your creatures, like your small unblockable guys, into card draw engines. It's these kind of effects that draw us cards on combat damage that we want in spades. This turns all of our little creatures into massive card draw engines. Good thing we have plenty of options for this. Both Reconnaissance Mission and Coastal Piracy are enchantment options that give us card draw power on combat damage, and the Bident of Thassa and the Indomitable give us artifact options too. The Indomitable doubles as a creature late in the game when crewed, and can trigger itself and these other effects. Bonus. There's really not a lot else salvageable from the base Precon, however, so there's plenty of more room for synergies and effects that we can build into our deck. Starting with creatures with the backup ability. Conclave Sledge Captain and Archpriest of Shadows both have on-combat damage triggers of their own, but when they enter the battlefield, the backup ability gives their text blocks to another creature, like our little unblockable guys. Being able to get these effects onto other creatures, or even just double up on their own triggers, great. There's plenty we can do with +1/+1 counters outside of backup as well. Drana, Liberator of Malakir, makes a great addition as first strike plus her trigger means 2 counters on each of your attacking creatures before they deal combat damage, a hurt that adds up fast. And Park Heights Maverick gets its own counters with Dethrone, but also proliferates on combat damage, meaning we've got some real ways to beef up our creatures. These can even take evasive or unblockable creatures to lethal status quickly. Marcus, Mutant Mayor from the Fallout set, helps us get counters on our creatures to proliferate, or draws us more cards when creatures that have counters on them connect. This kind of synergy starts building us a board state fast and keeps us topped up on resources like cards in hand. But the mother of all +1/+1 counter enablers is Necropolis Regent. Coming in at the top of our curve, she makes sure that a creature connecting for combat damage gets that many +1/+1 counters on it. With Felix out, that triples a creature's power and toughness when it connects. Permanently. Yikes. And that brings us to the 2 categories of creatures we really want in the deck. Creatures that put us ahead, and creatures that put our opponents behind. Ideally, we want a balance of both so that we can continue to build our board while stripping resources from opponents. That widens the gap between board states so significantly that not only do we beat our opponents into the ground, but we drown them in value. Creatures and effects that put us ahead are ones like Archmage's Newt, Tervingen, and Yuan-Ti Malison. These either let us recast our own spells, sometimes for free, makes us token creatures, or gets us the initiative. Even the base triggers are very, very good, and doubling up on them can often be overwhelming to our opponents. Sekiko Mother of Summer is another very, very good effect, adding us a boatload of green mana when our creatures connect. With how big some of our creatures can be, or just our baseline, 1 trigger is enough to cast almost everything we might have in hand, and 2 is enough to ensure that we can cast everything that we draw with all of our draw triggers. Creatures that set opponents back are ones that do just that. Aberrant, Banshee of the Dreadchoir, and Bladegrift Prototype all either blow up opponents' artifacts and enchantments, make them discard cards, or force them to choose permanents to be destroyed. Much like with the Banshee, creatures with Myriad like Scion of Calamity are extra good, as they create a copy of themselves with 1 version heading at each opponent. This means that when they connect, we get combat damage triggers from each of them, which Felix doubles up. That's a lot of destruction and a lot of resource drain, and enough to set opponents back to 0 on a single swing. But for creatures like Felix that don't naturally have an on-combat damage trigger, how else can we give them those effects? I've included a few cipher cards in the deck, like Writ of Return and Stolen Identity, which can be attached to a creature once cast to give them bonus on damage triggers, and make either clones or reanimate creatures from our yards. Equipment like Power Fist or Key to the Vault also help us get extra combat damage triggers onto creatures we control too, ensuring that we can get them either big and beefy or get extra value from combat again and again. Speaking of equipment, Fire Shrieker and other double strike enabling effects are wacky multiplicative in the deck, meaning Felix doubles up on each instance of combat damage triggers, in some cases resulting in 4 on-combat damage effects at once. But the big alternate win con in the deck and must-have is Strixhaven Stadium. With this, we can very easily be getting the 10 or more point counters needed to delete an opponent from the game, thanks to Felix doubling up on its trigger. Who said 3 mana rocks were bad? They seem pretty good when they win you the game. But this wouldn't be one of my budget brews without the upgrade. If I were to add some extra bucks to the brew, where would I start? Well, let's begin with the nuts and bolts. Improving some of the removal package is a good place to start. Feed the Swarm and Putrefy could easily become much more expensive cards like Mana Drain and Deadly Rollick. But if you don't want to step up your spends quite that much, an Offer You Can't Refuse and Swansong make for good interaction without breaking the bank entirely. We're also lacking board wipes in the deck, largely because we're a creature-based brew. This means we want sculptable wipes like Toxic Deluge in the list over more targeted removal like Negate or Reality Shift. We also really want more ways to protect our creatures, like with Heroic Intervention. Swapping a spell out for this doesn't compromise our creature base, but ups our utility for a good gotcha if someone tries to set us back. Now, speaking of our board, upgrading the deck with stronger on-combat damage creatures like Ashling the Extinguisher or Thada Adel Inquisitor or Hydra Omnivore would make the deck a power to be reckoned with. These more expensive options could replace Ayara's Oathsworn, Spawn Rife, and Giant Adaphage. Those options are all good, don't get me wrong, but we're pushing the power level here. If we really want bigger, better, badder curve toppers, it's really up to dragons. Ancient Brass Dragon, Old Gnawbone, and Ancient Bronze Dragon all make stellar top-of-curve creatures once you can get to 7 mana to cast them. Now, I am really excited to see what people do with Felix, and I hope you are too. If you're planning on building him or think I missed any must-haves for this deck, let me know in the comments. While you're here, hit that like and subscribe button to get all of my deck techs. Be sure to check out my full list linked below at my sponsor, Moxfield. Moxfield is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build on a budget. While you're there, follow my profile to never miss a brew. Be sure to check out these other Outlaws of Thunder Junction brews, and as always folks, good luck and have fun.